It started the way most nights do, quietly, without intention. The house had already settled into its evening sounds, wood contracting, pipes ticking softly behind the walls, the low, steady hum of electricity moving through places no one ever sees. Nothing unusual. Outside, the street had gone still. No passing cars, no distant voices, just the soft glow of streetlights reflected faintly on the windows. Inside, the air felt warm, comfortable, the kind of warmth that encourages you to slow down without realizing it. I had no plans that night, no reason to stay awake, no reason to rush towards sleep. So I didn't. I sat quietly, listening to the familiar sounds of the house doing what houses do when they're left alone long enough. There's a comfort in that kind of silence, the kind that doesn't demand attention, the kind that exists alongside you rather than pressing against you. At least that's what I believed then. The first thing I noticed wasn't a sound. It was the absence of one, the hum. I hadn't realized how constant it was until it wasn't there anymore. The house didn't go silent, it simply changed. The refrigerator still murmured softly. The clock on the wall still clicked once every second. The pipes still whispered faintly behind the walls. But something else had stopped. That low, steady background presence I'd grown used to had faded away, leaving a gap I couldn't immediately explain. I sat there for a moment, waiting for it to come back. It didn't. I told myself it was nothing. Power fluctuations happen. Old wiring has moods. Houses are imperfect things. Still, I found myself listening more closely than before. When you listen too carefully, silence stops being restful. It becomes something else. It becomes space. I stood and moved through the house slowly, not out of fear, but curiosity. Each room looked exactly as it should. Furniture where I left it, lights glowing softly, curtains still. Nothing disturbed. In the hallway, the air felt slightly cooler. Not cold, just different. The kind of difference you'd never notice unless you were already paying attention. I paused there longer than necessary, listening again. That's when I realized something else. The house sounded aware. Not alive, not conscious, just attentive. As if the quiet itself had shifted position. I smiled at the thought, shaking my head. It was late. My mind was filling empty spaces with ideas. I turned back toward the living room, ready to sit down again. That's when the floor creaked behind me. One soft sound, familiar. Houses creak all the time, but this one came after I'd stopped moving. I waited. Nothing followed. No second creak, no settling, no explanation. Just that single sound hanging in the air before dissolving back into quiet. I told myself it was the house adjusting. Temperature changes cause movement. Wood remembers pressure. I moved on. Time passed without announcement. I don't know how long I sat there afterward. Minutes, maybe longer. The clock continued its steady rhythm. The lights remained unchanged. Nothing dramatic happened. And yet, the sense of being alone began to feel negotiable. Not false, just flexible. I noticed it most when I stood again. The moment my feet touched the floor, the air seemed to tighten slightly. Not enough to alarm me, just enough to notice. I walked toward the kitchen, listening carefully. Each step sounded clearer than it should have. Each movement felt observed by the quiet itself. I stopped halfway across the room. The house didn't respond. No creaks, no shifts. It simply waited. I found myself holding my breath without meaning to. After a moment, I exhaled slowly and laughed under my breath. This was ridiculous. I was tired. That was all. Sleep felt like a reasonable solution. I turned off the lights one by one, letting the house fall into softer shadow. The darkness didn't feel heavy, just present. In the bedroom, the familiar shape of the room brought a sense of relief. This space still felt mine. I sat on the edge of the bed and listened. The house had resumed its usual sounds. The hum had returned, quiet, steady, reassuring. I lay down, letting the mattress support me, and closed my eyes. The quiet wrapped around me again, gentler now. My breathing slowed. Thoughts drifted. The edges of awareness softened. I was just beginning to fall asleep when the hum stopped again. This time I didn't open my eyes. I waited. Seconds passed, then minutes. The house remained still. No creaks, no ticking, no movement. Just my breathing. I listened carefully, trying to determine whether I was awake or dreaming. The silence felt closer than before. Not louder. Closer, as if it had leaned in. I opened my eyes. The room looked unchanged, dark, familiar, but something felt narrower. Not physically, emotionally. The space between the walls felt reduced, though the distance hadn't changed. I sat up slowly. The moment I moved, the house responded. A soft sound traveled through the walls. Not a creak, not a crack. Something deeper. A shift. As if the house were adjusting to my position. I stayed very still. Nothing followed. The silence returned, thicker than before. I considered turning on a light. The idea felt unnecessary. I wasn't afraid. Not exactly, just cautious. I lay back down, facing the ceiling, listening to the quiet settle again. Eventually the hum returned. I exhaled and let my eyes close. Sleep came more easily after that. I dreamed of hallways, not unfamiliar ones. Just longer than they should have been. Rooms that felt slightly misplaced. Doors that existed without leading anywhere. Nothing chased me. Nothing spoke. The dream moved slowly, like drifting through a house that had learned patience. When I woke, the room was filled with early morning light. The hum was steady. The house felt ordinary again, comfortable, safe. I lay there for a long time listening. Nothing unusual happened, no lingering sense of unease. No memory of fear, just a quiet house returning to its routine. Still, before I left the bedroom, I paused at the door. For a moment, I listened very carefully. The house listened back. If you're hearing this now, resting somewhere quiet, perhaps in a room that feels familiar, let the thought pass gently through you. Houses are not alive. They do not think. They do not watch. And yet, they remember. They remember footsteps. They remember stillness. They remember the shape of silence when someone stops moving. Tonight, let the quiet stay quiet. Let the walls remain walls. Let the house do what it's always done. And if you notice the silence leaning in, just breathe. The house is only listening.